My sister showed up at my door with a lawyer, demanding half of everything my father left me, claiming we were equals in his eyes. I stayed quiet, smiled, and told her we'd settle everything at her birthday party next week. But when I handed her that envelope in front of all her guests, would the DNA results inside destroy her life? Or finally reveal the truth she'd been hiding from everyone? I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. The doorbell rang at exactly 9:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. I remember the time because I was staring at my laptop screen, trying to focus on quarterly reports that were due by noon. I wasn't expecting anyone. My father had been gone for 3 weeks, and I was still finding his reading glasses in random places around the house. On the kitchen windowsill, tucked into the couch cushions, once even in the refrigerator next to the orange juice. I opened the door to find my sister Vanessa standing there, but she wasn't alone. Next to her stood a man in a charcoal gray suit, holding a leather briefcase that looked like it cost more than my car payment. His silver cufflinks caught the morning sun, and his expression was the kind of carefully neutral that only lawyers and poker players can manage. "Kathy," Vanessa said, not quite meeting my eyes. "We need to talk." I hadn't seen my sister in almost 2 years. She'd moved to Boston after her second divorce, claiming she needed a fresh start away from all the drama in Portland. The last time we'd spoken was at Thanksgiving, and even that had been a brief, awkward phone call where she'd complained about her new job at a marketing firm and how expensive everything was in Massachusetts. "Can we come in?" she asked, and something about the way she said it, like she was asking permission to enter a house she'd grown up in, made my stomach twist. I stepped aside. The man with the briefcase introduced himself as Richard Pemberton, attorney at law, and handed me a card that was so thick and expensive feeling it might as well have been made of wood. They settled into the living room, Vanessa on the leather armchair that Dad had loved, Pemberton on the couch with his briefcase balanced on his knees. "I'll get straight to the point," Vanessa said, and I noticed she'd had her hair done. Highlighted and styled in that effortless way that actually takes 2 hours and $300. "I've been reviewing Dad's will with Mr. Pemberton, and there are some serious concerns about the distribution of assets." I sat down slowly on the ottoman across from them. "Concerns? The will leaves everything to you," Pemberton said, pulling out a folder. "The house, the savings accounts, the investment portfolio, the vintage car collection, even the lakeside cabin in Montana. Your sister received nothing." "That's not entirely accurate," I said carefully. "Dad left Vanessa his book collection and Mom's jewelry box. The one with the sentimental items worth maybe $5,000, Vanessa interrupted, her voice sharp. "While you get assets worth over $1.3 million, the number hung in the air between us." I'd known Dad had been comfortable financially, but hearing it stated so bluntly made it feel different, larger, more real. "Dad made his choices," I said quietly. "I'm sorry you're upset, but we're not here to discuss feelings," Pemberton cut in smoothly. "We're here to discuss what's legally and morally right. Mr. Turner's will was written 7 years ago, before he became ill. There's substantial evidence that his judgment may have been compromised. Dad had a stroke last year, but his mind was sharp until the very end," I said, feeling heat rise in my chest. "He knew exactly what he was doing." Vanessa leaned forward, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Not quite desperation, but close. "Kathy, I'm your sister. We shared a childhood, shared parents, shared everything. How can you think it's fair that you get everything while I get nothing?" "You moved across the country," I said, and I hated how defensive I sounded. "You missed his birthday 3 years in a row. When he had the stroke, I was the one who found him. I was the one who managed his medications, drove him to physical therapy 4 times a week, sat with him through the bad nights when he couldn't remember Mom's face." "So this is punishment?" Vanessa's voice cracked. "Because I tried to build a life somewhere else? Because I wasn't the perfect daughter who stayed in boring Portland and played caretaker? That's not what I'm saying." "My client is proposing a reasonable solution," Pemberton interrupted again, and I was starting to really dislike his smooth, practiced tone. a 50-50 split of all assets. It's what most people would consider fair between two daughters. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want me to just hand over half of everything Dad left me? The house I grew up in? The cabin where we scattered Mom's ashes? We want what's equitable, Pemberton said. And if you're unwilling to negotiate, we're prepared to contest the will in court. These cases can drag on for years, Kathy. Legal fees alone could eat up a significant portion of the estate. Wouldn't it be easier to simply do the right thing? The right thing. As if there was a clear answer, a simple equation that could balance out 34 years of complicated family history. Vanessa pulled out her phone and showed me something, a photo of a cramped apartment, with boxes stacked against the walls. This is where I live now. I'm drowning in debt from Greg's gambling, and the marketing firm laid me off last month. I'm barely making rent, Kathy. Meanwhile, you're sitting in a fully paid-off house worth $500,000. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. The expensive haircut, the designer purse I'd noticed by the door, the shoes that definitely weren't from Target. Something didn't add up. When's your birthday, Vanessa? I asked suddenly. She blinked. What? Your birthday? When is it? Next Saturday. Why? I stood up, my mind racing with a plan that was either brilliant or completely insane. Here's what I'll do. Come back next Saturday for your birthday party. I'm throwing you one here at the house. Invite whoever you want, family, friends, and I'll give you my answer then, in front of everyone. Pemberton frowned. Miss Turner, this is a legal matter. It doesn't need to be 1 week, I said firmly, looking only at Vanessa. If you really believe we're equals, if you really think Dad would have wanted this split, then you can wait 7 days. Can't you? Vanessa exchanged a glance with her lawyer, and something passed between them. Some unspoken communication I couldn't quite read. Finally, she nodded. Fine, next Saturday. But Kathy? She paused at the door. Don't make me take this to court. I'm your sister. We shouldn't have to be enemies over money. After they left, I sat in Dad's chair and stared at the empty fireplace. The house felt too quiet, too big. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for. Dr. Patricia Chen, the family physician who'd treated both Vanessa and me since we were kids. My finger hovered over the call button. What I was about to do would either prove I was right or destroy what was left of my family forever. I pressed the dial. Dr. Chen. It's Kathy Turner. I need to ask you about something Dad mentioned before he died. Something about Vanessa's medical history. What she told me in the next 10 minutes changed everything. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now back to where we left off. Dr. Chen had been reluctant at first. Patient confidentiality, she'd explained, even after death, wasn't something to be taken lightly. But when I mentioned what Dad had whispered to me during his final days, something about the truth Vanessa needs to know, her silence on the other end of the line spoke volumes. Your father came to see me privately about 6 months before he passed, she finally said. He had questions about blood types and genetic inheritance, specifically about Vanessa. My hand tightened around the phone. What kind of questions? He wanted to understand why, if both he and your mother were O-positive, Vanessa tested as AB negative during her appendectomy when she was 16. I explained that it wasn't genetically possible. The room seemed to tilt slightly. And what did he say? He asked me not to tell anyone. He said he needed time to process it, to decide what to do. But Kathy, he also mentioned he'd started looking into DNA testing services. I don't know if he ever followed through. After I hung up, I sat there for a long time, my father's final words echoing in my memory. He'd been in and out of consciousness those last 48 hours, but during one lucid moment, he'd grabbed my hand and said, "Check the safety deposit box at First National. Everything you need is there. Don't let her take what isn't hers." I'd assumed he meant important documents, deeds, insurance policies, the usual paperwork. Now I wondered if he'd meant something else entirely. The next morning, I drove to First National Bank with the small brass key I'd found in Dad's desk drawer. The safety deposit box was larger than I'd expected, and inside was a manila envelope with my name written on it in Dad's shaky handwriting. Beneath it was another envelope, unmarked, sealed with tape. I opened mine first. Inside was a letter dated 4 months before his death. "Kathy, if you're reading this, then I'm gone and Vanessa has probably come looking for her share. I need you to know the truth, even though it breaks my heart to write it. Your mother and I always knew we couldn't have more children after you were born. The doctors were clear about that. When your mother came home pregnant with Vanessa, she confessed everything. She'd had an affair with someone she met at a teaching conference in Chicago. His name was Marcus Webb. I was angry, devastated, ready to leave. But when Vanessa was born and your mother looked at me with those desperate, pleading eyes, asking if I could love this child too, I couldn't say no. I raised Vanessa as my own. I never treated her differently, never loved her less. She was my daughter in every way that mattered, but your mother left everything we'd built together to you in her will because she felt guilty. And I'm doing the same. Vanessa has a biological father out there somewhere who owes her an inheritance, not me. The money I'm leaving you came from my parents, from investments I made before I even met your mother. It's Turner family money, and you're the only Turner. In the second envelope, you'll find the DNA test results I had done last year. I used Vanessa's hair from her old hairbrush that your mother kept. I needed to be certain before I made any final decisions. I'm sorry to leave you with this burden, but I need you to protect what's ours. Don't let her manipulate you with tears and lawyer tricks. She's not a bad person, but she's desperate, and desperate people do desperate things. Love always. Dad, my hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the second envelope. Inside was a DNA test report from Gene Trust Labs dated 11 months ago. The results were conclusive. Probability of paternity between James Turner and Vanessa Marie Turner, 0.0%. I sat in my car in the bank parking lot for 30 minutes, trying to process everything. My sister wasn't my full sister. My mother had cheated. My father had known for decades and said nothing. Then my phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "Can we have the party at 3 p.m.? I'm inviting about 25 people. Is that okay?" 25 people. She was planning a big show, probably expecting me to publicly announce I'd split everything with her. The manipulation was breathtaking. I texted back, "Perfect. See you Saturday." The next few days were a blur of preparation. I ordered a birthday cake from Vanessa's favorite bakery, the one that made those elaborate fondant creations she'd always loved. I hired a caterer, arranged for flowers, and even got a DJ. If this was going to be a performance, I'd make sure it was memorable. But I also made another call, this one to Marcus Webb. Finding him had been surprisingly easy. A 45-minute Google search led me to Marcus Webb, who'd been a history professor at Northwestern University 35 years ago, now retired and living in Evanston, Illinois. His faculty photo from 1989 showed a man with Vanessa's sharp cheekbones and distinctive widow's peak. When I called, he answered on the third ring. "Mr. Webb?" "My name is Kathy Turner. I'm calling about my mother, Linda Turner. I believe you knew her in 1989. The long pause that followed told me everything I needed to know. "Linda," he finally said, his voice rough. Is she all right?" "She passed away 8 years ago. Cancer." Another pause. "I'm sorry to hear that. We lost touch after Chicago. She told me she was going back to her husband, that we could never speak again." "Mr. Webb, did you know she had a baby? A daughter?" The silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. Then, I suspected. She stopped returning my calls 9 months after the conference. "I tried to reach out, but your father, I assume he was your father, sent me a very clear message through a lawyer to stay away from his family." I respected that. But I've wondered all these years. Her name is Vanessa. She's 34 now, and she's about to learn the truth about who her biological father is. "I thought you should know." We talked for another 20 minutes. Marcus was a widower with no children, living on a comfortable pension. He seemed genuinely shocked to learn about Vanessa's existence, and even more shocked when I told him about the inheritance dispute. "I'd like to meet her," he said finally, "if she's willing. I'm not trying to replace anyone or claim anything. I'd like to know my daughter." "She might not take it well," I warned him. "I understand. But I'll be available if she wants to reach out." After I hung up, I printed out Marcus Webb's contact information and added it to the folder I was preparing for Saturday. The DNA results, Dad's letter, and now a phone number for a father Vanessa didn't know she had. On Friday night, the night before the party, Vanessa called me. "Kathy, I just wanted to say thank you for doing this. I know things have been tense between us, and I'm sorry for bringing a lawyer to your door. Pemberton said it was the right move, but maybe it was too aggressive." "It's fine," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "I've been thinking about what you said. About me not being there for Dad. You were right. I should have visited more, called more. I was dealing with so much, you know? The divorce, the job stress. I let it all become an excuse. For a moment, I almost felt bad about what I was going to do. Almost. We'll talk about everything tomorrow," I said. "At the party." "Okay, hey, is it weird that I'm actually excited? It's been so long since we had a real family gathering. Remember Mom's birthday parties? She always made such a big deal about them." "I remember," I said, and I did. Mom had loved celebrations, loved having the house full of people. If she were alive now, how would she feel about what I was about to reveal? "See you tomorrow, sis," Vanessa said and hung up. I looked at the folder on my kitchen table, at all the evidence of a secret that had been buried for 34 years. Tomorrow everything will come out. Tomorrow Vanessa would learn that the father she'd mourned for 3 weeks wasn't her father at all, and tomorrow I'd find out if blood really was thicker than water, or if some betrayals were just too deep to forgive. Saturday arrived with unseasonably warm weather for October in Portland. I'd spent the morning setting up the backyard, stringing lights between the oak trees and arranging tables with white tablecloths that fluttered in the breeze. The caterer had arrived at noon with trays of appetizers, and the DJ was testing his equipment near the patio. Everything looked perfect. Deceptively, devastatingly perfect. The folder sat on my bedroom dresser, sealed in a large cream-colored envelope. I'd dressed carefully, a navy blue dress that Mom had always said made me look professional but approachable. I needed to look composed for what was coming. Guests started arriving at 2:30, Vanessa's friends from high school, a few cousins I barely recognized, some people from her old job at the advertising agency downtown. Vanessa herself showed up at 2:45 in a flowing white sundress, looking radiant and relaxed in a way I hadn't seen in years. "Kathy, this is incredible," she said, hugging me tight. "You really went all out." "It's your birthday," I said simply. Richard Pemberton arrived at 3:15, notably without his briefcase but with the same calculating eyes. He positioned himself near the bar, watching everything with professional detachment. By 3:30, the party was in full swing. Music played, people laughed, and Vanessa worked the crowd like she was running for office. I watched her charm our cousin Timothy, watched her tell animated stories to her old college roommate, and watched her pose for photos with a bright, genuine smile. This was the sister I remembered from childhood. Before the divorces, before the distance, before whatever had hardened her into someone who'd show up at my door with a lawyer. At 4, the cake came out, 3 tiers decorated with edible flowers and gold leaf. Everyone sang happy birthday, and Vanessa blew out 34 candles while people cheered and took videos on their phones. Speech. Someone called out, and others picked up the chant. "Speech! Speech!" Vanessa laughed and held up her hands. Okay. I just want to say thank you all for being here. The last few years have been rough, I won't lie. Divorce, job loss, losing Dad. It felt like everything was falling apart. But standing here now, surrounded by people I love, in the house I grew up in, I feel like maybe things are finally turning around. She looked directly at me, especially thanks to my sister Kathy, who's always been the strong one, the responsible one. She's taken care of everything since Dad died, and I know I haven't made it easy on her. But family is family, right? And at the end of the day, that's what matters most. People applauded. Several guests looked at me expectantly, clearly anticipating some kind of emotional reconciliation moment. I walked to the center of the patio, and the DJ lowered the music. "Vanessa's right," I said, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet yard. Family is what matters most. That's why I wanted everyone here today to celebrate her birthday, but also to address something important that's come up recently. Vanessa's smile flickered slightly. Pemberton straightened, suddenly alert. "Some of you may know that our father passed away 3 weeks ago. What you might not know is that Vanessa has contested his will, claiming she deserves half of everything he left me." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Vanessa's face flushed red. "Kathy, this isn't the time. You wanted witnesses," I said calmly. "You wanted this handled publicly, so let's handle it publicly." I pulled the cream envelope from where I'd hidden it under the gift table and held it up for everyone to see. Before Dad died, he told me to check his safety deposit box. Inside, I found a letter explaining why he structured his will the way he did. I also found something else. Something that changes everything. Vanessa's eyes were locked on the envelope, and I saw real fear there now. "What are you talking about?" "Dad had a DNA test done last year. He wanted to be absolutely certain before he made his final decisions about his estate." The silence was suffocating. Someone's phone camera was definitely recording now. "Certain about what?" Vanessa's voice was barely a whisper. I opened the envelope and pulled out the Gene Trust Labs report, holding it so she could see the official letterhead, the charts, and the undeniable conclusion printed in bold at the bottom. "Certain that you're not his biological daughter." The words landed like a bomb. Vanessa staggered backward, caught by her friend Rachel. Pemberton moved forward, reaching for the document, but I held it out of his reach. "That's impossible," Vanessa said, her voice shaking. You're lying. This is some kind of trick to keep the money." "Mom had an affair in 1989, I continued, and I hated how clinical my voice sounded, how detached. "With a history professor named Marcus Webb. She got pregnant. Dad found out, but he chose to raise you anyway. He loved you, Vanessa. He really did. But when it came to his estate, money that came from his parents, from his own work, he left it to his biological child. To me." Vanessa's face had gone completely white. No, that's not true. Mom wouldn't, Dad never said anything." "He kept the secret for 34 years, I said. "He protected you from the truth, but he also made sure I knew, so I could protect what was rightfully mine." "Let me see that report," Pemberton demanded, and this time I handed it to him. He scanned it quickly, his jaw tightening. Vanessa turned to him desperately. "It's fake, right?" "She faked it to get out of splitting the inheritance." "Tell her she can't do this." "The report appears legitimate," Pemberton said quietly. "And if it's accurate, it substantially undermines our case." "Our case?" Vanessa's voice rose hysterically. "That's all you care about? I just found out my entire life is a lie." She turned back to me, and the look on her face was pure devastation. "How long have you known?" "Since Tuesday, when you showed up with your lawyer. And you let me plan this party." Her voice broke. "You've been lying to me for a week." "Dad lied to you for 34 years, I shot back. "To protect you. To give you a normal childhood. And this is how you repay him? By showing up the minute he's gone, demanding money that was never meant for you? I'm still his daughter," Vanessa screamed. "DNA doesn't change 29 years of being his daughter." "You're right," I said, and I felt my own composure starting to crack. "It doesn't. Which is why he left you Mom's jewelry and his book collection, things that actually meant something to him." "But the money? The house? The investments? Those are Turner family assets, Vanessa. And you're not a Turner." The crowd had gone from shocked to horrified. People were backing toward the exits, clearly wanting no part of this family implosion. Vanessa was crying now, mascara running down her face. "So what? You get everything and I get nothing?" "I'm drowning, Kathy. I'm barely surviving. And you're going to keep it all because of some DNA test? You have a biological father," I said, pulling out the second sheet of paper. Marcus Webb. He's a retired professor living in Illinois. I contacted him. He didn't know about you, but he wants to meet you. Maybe he can help. I held out Marcus's contact information, but Vanessa didn't take it. She just stared at me like I'd become a stranger. I will never forgive you for this, she whispered. Never. She turned and walked out, pushing through the crowd. Rachel and a few other friends hurried after her. Pemberton gave me a long, appraising look before following. The remaining guests dispersed quickly after that, offering awkward condolences and avoiding eye contact. Within 20 minutes, the backyard was empty except for the caterers quietly packing up their supplies and the DJ dismantling his equipment. I stood alone among the streamers and uneaten cake, holding the DNA results and Marcus Webb's phone number, wondering if I'd just won a battle or lost something far more valuable than any inheritance. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Marcus Webb. Vanessa just called me." We talked for 2 hours. I'm flying to Portland on Monday. I don't know if this will help or make things worse, but thank you for giving me the chance to get to know my daughter. I sank into one of the white chairs and watched the sun set behind the oak trees, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that Mom would have loved. The truth was out now. No more secrets, no more lies. But looking at the destruction around me, the abandoned party, the shattered relationships, the empty chairs where family should have been, I couldn't help but wonder if some truths were better left buried. The house felt different after everyone left. Not just empty, but hollow, like the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. I spent Sunday cleaning up, throwing away wilted flowers and uneaten cake, taking down lights that had been meant to celebrate, but instead had illuminated a family's darkest secret. My phone stayed silent. No calls from Vanessa, no texts from relatives demanding explanations. Just Marcus Webb's message, still sitting in my inbox like a question I didn't know how to answer. Monday morning, I was sorting through Dad's old tax documents when someone knocked on the door. Not the doorbell this time, an actual knock. Hesitant and uncertain. I opened it to find Aunt Patricia, my mother's younger sister, standing on the porch with a thermos of coffee and the kind of expression that said she'd come prepared for a long conversation. "I heard what happened at the party," she said without preamble. "Timothy posted a video on Facebook before his wife made him take it down. Can I come in?" We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Mom used to serve Sunday dinners, where Dad had done crossword puzzles every morning until his hands got too shaky to hold a pen. "Your mother told me about the affair," Patricia said, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. "Not right away. It took her almost 3 years. She was eaten alive by guilt, but she was also terrified of losing everything. Your father, you, the life she'd built. Did you think Dad was wrong? For leaving everything to me?" Patricia was quiet for a moment, staring into her coffee. "I think your father did what he thought was right. But Kathy, honey, right and kind aren't always the same thing. She came at me with a lawyer," I said defensively. "She didn't ask, she demanded. Like Dad's death was just an opportunity for her to cash in." "I know. And that was wrong of her. But you humiliated her in front of everyone she knew. You took the worst moment of her life and made it into a public theater." The words stung because they were true. What was I supposed to do? Just handed over half of everything because she cried poorly? "She flew in yesterday. Didn't tell anyone except me. Said she needed to visit them on the actual day." Patricia paused. "She's doing better, Kathy. The job is good. Marcus has been wonderful. She's even dating someone, a guy named Andrew who teaches economics at the university. That's good. I'm glad. Are you?" The question hung there, more complicated than it should have been. Was I glad? Or was part of me bitter that Vanessa had found a way forward without me, had built a new life while I was stuck in the old one? "Yes," I said finally and meant it. "I'm glad she's okay. She asks about you sometimes. Never directly. She'll say things like, 'I wonder if the oak tree in the backyard survived that storm,' or, 'Is Kathy still working at the same firm?' She won't admit it, but I think she misses you. She made it clear we're done. People say things when they're hurt. Doesn't always mean they're permanent. After we hung up, I sat there until the rain stopped and the clouds broke enough to let through weak afternoon sunlight. Then I drove to Salvatore's, the Italian restaurant where Vanessa had first met Marcus. The owner, Gino, recognized me immediately. "Kathy, it's been a long time. You want your usual table? Actually, I need a favor. Do you do catering?" 3 days later, a package arrived at Vanessa's Chicago apartment. I knew because I'd paid extra for delivery confirmation. Had tracked it obsessively from Portland to Illinois. Watched the little map icon move across state lines like I could somehow protect it in transit. Inside was a letter and a check. The letter had taken me 17 drafts to write. Vanessa, I've spent 6 months trying to figure out how to say I'm sorry. Every version sounded wrong. Too defensive, too self-justifying, not enough. So I'm going to keep it simple. I was wrong. Not about Dad's intentions with the will, but about how I handled it. You deserved privacy, compassion, time to process. Instead, I gave you public humiliation and legal documents. I told myself I was protecting what was mine. But really, I was punishing you for leaving, for not being there, for not being who I thought you should be. Aunt Patricia told me something that stuck with me. Right and kind aren't always the same thing. I was so focused on being right that I forgot to be kind. I forgot we were sisters first, before any of the DNA tests or inheritance disputes or lawyer meetings. The check is for $200,000, 20% of the liquid assets from Dad's estate. I know you withdrew the lawsuit and Marcus has been helping you, but this isn't about that. This is about acknowledging that while Dad left everything to me legally, you deserved something more than Mom's jewelry box and a book collection. You spent 34 years as James Turner's daughter. That matters. That counts. And maybe he couldn't see a way to honor both the legal reality and the emotional truth, but I can. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not even asking you to cash the check if you don't want to. I just need you to know that I see you. I see what you lost when I revealed that secret. I see the sister who used to help me build blanket forts and sneak cookies before dinner and tell me everything would be okay when I was scared. Dad's birthday passed last week. I saw your flowers at the cemetery. White lilies. You remembered they were Mom's favorite. I added daisies. Maybe next year, if you're willing, we could go together. Love, Kathy. 2 weeks passed with no response. I threw myself into work, took on extra projects, stayed late at the office to avoid the empty house. Helen Briggs called to ask if I was sure about the $200,000. It wasn't too late to reverse the transfer. I told her I was certain. On a Tuesday evening, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Vanessa standing on the porch, holding a small overnight bag and looking uncertain in a way that reminded me of when we were kids and she'd broken Mom's favorite vase. "The check cleared," she said. "I called the bank to make sure it wasn't a mistake." It wasn't. $200,000 is a lot of money. It's what you should have had from the start. What Dad should have figured out how to give you. We stood there in the doorway, rain starting to fall again, neither of us quite sure what to do next. "I'm still angry," Vanessa said finally. "At you, at Dad, at Mom for having the affair in the first place, at Marcus for existing, even though he's been nothing but kind. I'm angry at all of it. You have every right to be. But I'm also tired of being angry. Tired of avoiding family gatherings because you might be there. Tired of pretending I don't miss my sister. Something cracked open in my chest. I miss you too." The letter said maybe we could visit the cemetery together next year. Vanessa shifted her bag. Dad's birthday was 2 weeks ago, but Mom's is next month, April 12th. Maybe we will start there. I'd like that. I can't promise I'm ready to come back for family dinners or holidays. I can't promise I won't still resent you sometimes when I remember that party. But maybe we start small. Cemetery visits, occasional phone calls, work our way back. Small is good, I said. Small is more than I deserve. You sent me $200,000 and a letter that actually sounded like you understood what you did wrong. That counts for something, I stepped aside. Do you want to come in? I have leftover lasagna from Salvatore's. Gino asked about you last time I was there. Vanessa hesitated on the threshold, looking past me into the house where we'd grown up, where our parents had kept secrets and told lies and somehow still managed to love us both. "One condition," she said. "We don't talk about inheritance. Not tonight. Tonight, we're just two sisters having dinner in a house that has too many memories to count. Deal." She stepped inside and I closed the door behind her. The house didn't feel quite so empty anymore. We ate lasagna at the kitchen table and talked about safe things. Her new job. My latest project at work. Whether Gino had finally updated his restaurant's ancient decor. We didn't mention Dad or DNA tests or birthday parties gone wrong. We didn't fix everything because some things can't be fixed in a single evening. But when Vanessa left the next morning, she hugged me at the door. Brief, still a little awkward, but real. "See you April 12th, she said. "Don't forget the daisies." "White lilies, too," I promised. I watched her drive away, then walked back into the house that was mine by blood and law and inheritance. I looked at Dad's framed will hanging in the study, at Mom's paintings still on the walls, at 34 years of family history contained in furniture and photographs and small, ordinary objects. Dad had been right about one thing. Protecting the Turner family legacy mattered. But he'd been wrong about what that legacy actually was. It wasn't the money or the house or the investments. It was the connection between two sisters who'd grown up in these rooms, who'd loved the same parents despite everything, who were learning, slowly, painfully, how to forgive. I took the will off the wall and put it in a drawer. Some things didn't need to be on display. Then I pulled out my calendar and wrote on April 12th, Mom's birthday, cemetery, 10 a.m., bring flowers. And underneath, in smaller letters, lunch with Vanessa after? The question mark felt important. Nothing was guaranteed. We might take one step forward and 3 steps back. We might never fully repair what I'd broken at that birthday party. But for the first time in 6 months, I felt something other than the hollow victory of being right. I felt hope. April 12th arrived with the kind of perfect spring weather that felt almost intentional. Bright sun, clear skies, cherry blossoms floating like pink snow through the air. I arrived at Forest Hill Cemetery 15 minutes early, clutching white lilies and yellow daisies, my palms sweating despite the cool morning breeze. Vanessa's rental car pulled up at exactly 10 Dao. She'd always been punctual, even as a kid. Some things never changed. She stepped out wearing jeans and a light blue sweater, her hair shorter than I remembered, cut into a practical bob that somehow made her look both older and more like the sister I'd grown up with. "You brought both," she said, nodding at the flowers in my hands. It seemed wrong to make Mom choose. We walked together to the gravesite, our footsteps crunching on the gravel path. The last time we'd been here together was Dad's funeral, me supporting Vanessa while she sobbed, both of us numb with grief and disbelief. Now the ground had settled. Grass had grown over the fresh earth and everything looked peaceful in a way that felt wrong. Death shouldn't be so tidy. Vanessa arranged the lilies carefully in the vase, and I added the daisies around them. For a moment, we just stood there, 2 daughters at their parents' grave, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down like the spring air itself had substance. "I've been seeing a therapist," Vanessa said suddenly. "Started in January. Marcus suggested it. Said I needed to process everything that happened. Not just bury it and pretend I was fine. That's good. Healthy. She asked me to write a letter to Dad, to tell him how I felt about everything. The secret, the will, finding out about Marcus. I was supposed to burn it after some kind of symbolic closure thing. Did you? Couldn't bring myself to. It felt like losing him all over again. She pulled a folded envelope from her jacket pocket. I brought it with me today. Thought maybe I could read it here, with you. If that's weird, just say so. It's not weird. Vanessa unfolded 3 pages of notebook paper covered in her neat handwriting. Her hands shook slightly as she began to read. "Dear Dad, I don't know if you can hear me wherever you are, but I need to say these things anyway. When you died, I thought the worst pain was losing you. Then Kathy showed me that DNA test, and I realized I'd lost you twice. Once to death, and once to the truth that you'd been keeping from me my entire life. I'm angry that you never told me. Angry that you let me grow up thinking I was your daughter in every way, only to have it ripped away after you were gone. I'm angry that you put Kathy in the position of being the messenger, that you made her choose between honoring your wishes and protecting our relationship. But I'm also grateful. Grateful that you chose to raise me despite everything, that you taught me to ride a bike and helped me with algebra homework, and walked me down the aisle, twice, even though you told me the first guy wasn't good enough for me and you were right. You were always right about things like that. Meeting Marcus has been strange. He's a good man and I'm glad to know him, but he's not you. He didn't kiss my scraped knees or read me bedtime stories or tell me I was brave when I was scared. You did those things. Biology doesn't erase 29 years of being my father. What hurts most is that I can't ask you why. Why did you keep the secret? Why did you structure the will the way you did? Why didn't you find some way to be fair to both your daughters, even if one wasn't yours by blood? Kathy sent me money, $200,000. More than I expected, more than I thought I deserved after everything. Her letter said you couldn't see a way to honor both legal reality and emotional truth, but she could. I wish you'd found that way too. I forgive you for the secret. I forgive Mom for the affair. I'm working on forgiving Kathy for how she handled everything. And I'm trying to forgive myself for not being there more in your final years, for choosing distance over discomfort. I miss you. I miss calling you on Sunday mornings and hearing you complain about the Blazers. I miss your terrible dad jokes and the way you'd hum off key while doing the dishes. I miss knowing I had a father who loved me unconditionally. Maybe that's the real inheritance you left me. Not money or jewelry, but the knowledge that I was loved. That I mattered to someone in a way that had nothing to do with DNA or obligation. If I can hold on to that, maybe the rest doesn't matter so much. Love always. Your daughter, Vanessa. By the time she finished, both of us were crying. Not the ugly, devastating sobs from the funeral, but quiet tears that felt more like relief than grief. Thank you for reading that, I said, wiping my eyes, for sharing it with me. My therapist said part of healing is letting people see your pain instead of hiding it. I've been hiding for so long, from you, from the family, from myself. Vanessa carefully refolded the letter. I'm keeping this one. Maybe I'll write another one to burn later. But this one stays. We spent another 20 minutes at the grave, sharing memories. The time Dad accidentally locked himself out of the house in his underwear. Mom's disastrous attempt to make homemade pasta that ended up all over the ceiling. The Christmas we got a puppy and it immediately peed on the presents. Normal memories. Good ones. The kind that weren't complicated by secrets or DNA tests. So, Vanessa said as we walked back toward our cars, you mentioned lunch in your text? There's a new place downtown that does amazing Vietnamese food. Or we could go to Salvatore's if you're feeling nostalgic. Vietnamese sounds good. Something different. The restaurant was called Faux Real, which made Vanessa groan at the pun but smile anyway. We ordered spring rolls and po and Thai iced tea, falling into conversation that felt almost natural. Almost. Tell me about Andrew, I said. Aunt Patricia mentioned you were dating someone. Vanessa's face softened. He's wonderful. Patient, funny, completely nerdy about economics theory. He knows about everything, the inheritance drama, the DNA test, all of it. I told him on our second date because I figured if it was going to scare him off, better to know early. And it didn't? He said every family has complicated stories. His parents disowned him for 3 years when he came out as bisexual. They've since reconciled, but he understands messy family dynamics. I'm glad you found someone good. What about you? Anyone special? I shook my head. Work has been consuming most of my time. I took on a major project redesigning a hospital's IT infrastructure. Keeps me busy. Busy enough that you don't have to think about living alone in that big house? The observation was uncomfortably accurate. Maybe. Vanessa stirred her faux thoughtfully. Have you ever considered selling it? Starting fresh somewhere without all the memories? I've thought about it. But every time I get close to calling a realtor, I remember something. The height marks on the kitchen door frame where Dad measured us every year. the loose floorboard in the hallway that squeaks, Mom's garden that's somehow still producing tomatoes every summer. It feels like giving up. Or it could feel like moving forward. Vanessa met my eyes. You don't have to be the keeper of everyone's memories, Kathy. You're allowed to build your own life, says the woman who moved to Chicago. Exactly. And it helped. Getting distance, creating something new that wasn't tangled up in all the family history. I'm not saying you should move across the country, but maybe you consider what you actually want instead of what you think you should want. The insight stung because it was true. I'd spent so long doing what I thought was right, staying in Portland, taking care of Dad, protecting the inheritance, that I'd never stopped to ask what I actually wanted for myself. Marcus invited me to spend Thanksgiving with him in Chicago, Vanessa said. He wants to introduce me to his side of the family, aunts, uncles, cousins I didn't know existed. It's overwhelming, but also kind of exciting. That sounds nice. He asked if you'd want to come too. I nearly choked on my tea. What? He said you're the one who brought us together, and he'd like to meet you. Thank you properly for giving him the chance to get to know his daughter. Vanessa played with her napkin. You don't have to decide now. It's months away, but the invitation's there. The idea of spending Thanksgiving with Vanessa, Marcus, and a bunch of strangers felt both terrifying and oddly appealing. A chance to see Vanessa's new life, to meet the man whose existence had upended everything, to maybe build something different than what we'd lost. Let me think about it, I said. Fair enough. We finished lunch talking about lighter things. Vanessa's new job, my hospital project, whether the Blazers would ever win another championship. When the check came, we both reached for it, caught each other's eye, and laughed. Split it? Vanessa suggested. Split it. Outside the restaurant, we stood awkwardly by our cars, neither quite ready to say goodbye, but unsure how to prolong the moment. This was good, Vanessa said finally. Harder than I expected, but good. Can we do it again? Next month, maybe? I'd like that. Maybe not at the cemetery. Let's try starting with just lunch. Deal. She hugged me before getting in her car, longer than the brief embrace last time, tight enough that I could feel her heartbeat or maybe my own. When she pulled away, her eyes were damp, but she was smiling. See you next month, sis. I watched her drive away, then sat in my own car for a long moment before starting the engine. The day had been emotionally exhausting, dredging up grief and guilt and complicated feelings I'd been trying to avoid for months. But underneath all that was something lighter, something that felt almost like hope. We weren't fixed. We might never be completely whole again. But we were trying, and maybe that was enough. I drove home to the big empty house with Dad's height marks and Mom's garden and 34 years of memories pressed into every corner. Maybe Vanessa was right. Maybe I didn't have to be the keeper of everyone's memories. Maybe I could choose what to keep and what to release. That evening, I pulled out my laptop and started browsing real estate listings, not with any serious intention to sell, but just to see what else was out there. Condos downtown with city views, smaller houses in different neighborhoods, even a few places in Seattle or Eugene if I wanted a bigger change. It felt dangerous and thrilling, like standing at the edge of something new without knowing if I'd fall or fly. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. Thank you for today. For the flowers, for lunch, for everything. Next month, let's try that new bookstore on Hawthorne. I hear they have a great cafe. I typed back, it's a date. And Vanessa, thank you for giving me another chance. Her response came quickly, we're sisters. That means unlimited chances, even when we don't deserve them. I set my phone down and looked around the living room, at the space that had been a battlefield and was slowly becoming just a home again. Tomorrow I'd go back to work, to my routine, to the life I'd built in the shadow of my parents' choices. But tonight, I had plans to see my sister next month, an invitation to Thanksgiving in Chicago, and the beginning of something that felt like forgiveness. The inheritance had nearly destroyed us, but maybe, just maybe, it had also shown us what actually mattered. Not the money or the house or who was related to whom by blood. Just two sisters, finding their way back to each other, one careful step at a time. Thanksgiving in Chicago was nothing like the holidays I remembered from childhood. Marcus Webb's apartment overlooked Lake Michigan, all floor-to-ceiling windows and modern furniture that looked expensive, but somehow still felt welcoming. The turkey was catered from an upscale restaurant. The table was set with china I was afraid to touch. And there were 12 people I'd never met making polite conversation about politics and weather. I'd almost backed out 3 times. Once when I booked the flight, once at the airport gate, and once standing outside Marcus's building with my suitcase. I was convinced this was a terrible idea, but Vanessa had texted that morning, "You better not chicken out." I need backup dealing with Marcus's sister. She's intense. So here I was drinking wine that probably cost more than my grocery budget and trying to remember everyone's names. Marcus's sister Helena, her husband Robert, their 3 grown children with their respective partners, and Marcus's college friend Bernard, who apparently came to every major holiday because he had nowhere else to go. Marcus himself was exactly as I'd imagined from our phone call: tall, distinguished, with Vanessa's cheekbones and the kind eyes that suggested decades of teaching idealistic students. When he'd opened the door and seen me standing there, he'd pulled me into a hug without hesitation. "Thank you," he'd whispered, "for giving me my daughter." Vanessa looked more relaxed than I'd seen her in years. She moved through the apartment with easy familiarity, helping Marcus in the kitchen, laughing at Bernard's stories, introducing me to everyone as my sister Kathy from Portland, not half-sister, not complicated DNA situation sister, just sister. Andrew was exactly as she'd described, warm, funny, genuinely interested when I talked about my work. He stayed close to Vanessa, their hands finding each other naturally, and I felt a pang of something that might have been envy but was mostly happiness that she'd found someone solid. During dinner, Helena asked how Vanessa and I had ended up celebrating Thanksgiving in Chicago instead of Portland. The table went quiet. Vanessa and I exchanged glances. "Long story," Vanessa said carefully. "We've got pie and coffee coming," Helena pressed. I love long stories, so we told her. Not everything. Some details were too raw, too personal for strangers. But the broad strokes: Dad's death, the disputed inheritance, the DNA test, the birthday party revelation, the months of estrangement, the slow reconciliation. I expected judgment, awkward silence, the kind of discomfort that comes when family drama gets exposed. Instead, Helena laughed. "Oh, honey," she said, looking at Marcus. "Tell them about Dad's will," Marcus grimaced. "Do we have to?" "Absolutely we do." "Fair's fair," Marcus sighed. When our father died, he left everything to Helena because she'd stayed in Illinois to run the family business while I went off to be a professor. I was furious. We didn't speak for 2 years. He showed up at my daughter's wedding uninvited and got drunk at the reception, Helena added cheerfully. Made a whole scene about family loyalty and betrayal. I did not get drunk. You absolutely did. You cried during the father-daughter dance, and it wasn't even your daughter. The table erupted in laughter, and I felt something loosen in my chest. We weren't the only family with complicated inheritances and messy reconciliations. What changed? I asked. Helena and Marcus looked at each other. Mom got sick, Helena said simply. And suddenly the money didn't matter as much as having my brother back. We split Dad's estate 50-55 years after he died. It took lawyers forever to sort it out, but we figured out what mattered. Family, Marcus said, raising his wine glass, even when they drive you absolutely insane. Everyone drank to that. Later, while people were scattered around the apartment in various conversations, Marcus pulled me aside onto the balcony. The November wind off the lake was brutal, but the view was spectacular. City lights reflecting off dark water, the skyline glittering like something from a movie. I wanted to thank you properly, Marcus said, without an audience. You could have kept the secret, let Vanessa go on believing James was her biological father. It would have been easier. It didn't feel easy at the time. I'm sure it didn't, but you gave me something I never expected to have, a daughter. a chance to know her, to be part of her life. He stared out at the water. James Turner was a better man than me. I had an affair with a married woman and then disappeared when it got complicated. He raised another man's child as his own for 34 years. There's no comparison. He loved her, I said. That was never fake. I know. Vanessa told me stories about him, teaching her to drive, helping her through her divorces, being there for all the moments I missed. I'm grateful to him for that, and I'm sorry that my existence caused such chaos in your family. It wasn't your existence that caused chaos. It was the secret. The lies we all told ourselves about what mattered. Marcus nodded slowly. What does matter, do you think? In your estimation? I thought about it, watching the lights shimmer on the lake. Connection. Real connection. Not obligation or blood or legal documents, but actually showing up for each other. That's what I lost when I humiliated Vanessa at that party. I was so focused on being legally right that I forgot about being her sister. And now? Now we're figuring it out, slowly. She talks about you all the time, Marcus said. What you're like, stories from your childhood, how you took care of your father. She's proud of you even when she's still angry. I don't deserve that. Maybe not. But that's what family is, loving each other anyway, even when we screw up spectacularly. Through the glass door, I could see Vanessa laughing at something Andrew was saying, her hand on his arm looking genuinely happy. This was her new life, new city, new job, new father, new relationship. She'd built something good from the wreckage of that birthday party. I'm thinking about selling the house in Portland, I said suddenly. The one we grew up in. Marcus raised his eyebrows. Big decision. Vanessa said something a few months ago about not having to be the keeper of everyone's memories. I think she was right. I've been holding on to the past so tightly I forgot to build a future. What would you do instead? I don't know yet. Maybe move to Seattle, try something new. Maybe stay in Portland but find a smaller place. Something that's mine instead of inherited. I have options now. That's what the inheritance actually gave me. Freedom to choose. James would want that for you. Whatever else he got wrong, he wanted his daughter to be taken care of. His daughter. Singular. The words should have stung, but they didn't. Because I was James Turner's daughter, and Vanessa was Marcus Webb's daughter. And somehow we were also sisters who were learning to navigate a relationship that didn't fit into neat categories. We went back inside where Helena was organizing a cutthroat game of charades. Vanessa pulled me onto her team, and we proceeded to lose spectacularly because neither of us could act, and we kept laughing too hard to function. It felt normal. Not perfect, not completely healed, but normal in a way that suggested maybe we'd get there eventually. That night, Vanessa and I shared a room in Marcus's guest suite, twin beds like we were kids again, though everything else was decidedly adult and expensive. Thank you for coming, Vanessa said in the darkness. I know it was weird. Good. Weird, though. Yeah. She was quiet for a moment. I've been thinking about the house, too. What should you do with it? And? I think you should sell it. Start fresh. We'll always have the memories, the good ones at least, but you deserve to build something that's yours, not just inherited from people who are gone. What about all Dad's stuff? The furniture, the books, Mom's paintings? Keep what matters. Donate the rest. I already took what I wanted when I got the jewelry box. The rest is yours to decide. I rolled over to look at her silhouette in the dim light from the window. Do you ever regret it? Calling me that day with the lawyer? Every single day, she said without hesitation. I was desperate and stupid, and I let Pemberton convince me I deserved something I hadn't earned. But Kathy, I also don't regret what came after. Meeting Marcus, moving to Chicago, finding Andrew, building this new life, none of that would have happened if everything hadn't exploded the way it did. So we needed the catastrophe to get to the good part? Maybe. Or maybe we're just making the best of the catastrophe, which is what people do. We talked into the early morning hours, about Mom and Dad, about the inheritance and what we'd each learned, about futures we were still figuring out. It felt like old times, late-night conversations about everything and nothing, The kind of sister talks I'd missed more than I'd realized. When I flew back to Portland 2 days later, I immediately called a realtor. The house sold in 3 weeks. A young family with 2 kids who loved the backyard and didn't mind the squeaky floorboard. I kept Mom's paintings, Dad's favorite reading chair, and the photo albums. Everything else got donated or sold. I found a condo downtown with a view of the river and enough space for what I actually needed, not what I thought I should keep. It felt like breathing after holding my breath for a year. Vanessa flew out for my housewarming party in February. Just her, Aunt Patricia, a few colleagues from work, and Helen Briggs, who'd become something like a friend through the whole legal ordeal. To new beginnings, Vanessa said, raising her glass in my sparse living room that still smelled like paint and possibility. To sisters who survive catastrophes, I countered. To family, Aunt Patricia added. However we define it. We drank to that. To messy, complicated, imperfect family relationships that bent but didn't break. That survived secrets and betrayals and spectacular mistakes. Later, after everyone had left, Vanessa and I stood on my small balcony watching the river flow past. Lights from the bridges reflecting on the dark water. You know what Dad got right? Vanessa said. He loved us both. Maybe not equally, maybe not in the same way, but genuinely. That's worth more than any inheritance. Even 1.3 million? Even that. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Helena wants to know if you two can make it for Easter. She's already planning the menu. I showed Vanessa and we both laughed. Should we? She asked. Why not? Family tradition? Which family? All of them, I said. We're allowed to have more than one. The river kept flowing, carrying away the past toward an ocean we couldn't see. Behind us was a condo that held no memories yet, just potential. Beside me was my sister, half, full, or something more complicated than words could capture. And ahead was a future we'd build together, one careful choice at a time. The inheritance had nearly destroyed us. But in the end, it taught us what we should have known all along, that the most valuable things can't be left in wills or divided by lawyers or proven by DNA tests. They're built through forgiveness, rebuilt through effort, and inherited not through blood, but through the choice to keep showing up, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Hey, Kathy, Vanessa said as we headed back inside. Yeah? Next time we have a major family crisis, let's try handling it without lawyers and public humiliation. Deal. Just phone calls and awkward conversations like normal people. Normal is overrated, but I'll take it. We closed the balcony door on the cold night air and settled into my new living room. 2 sisters with a complicated past and an uncertain future, figuring it out together one day at a time, and somehow that was enough. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.